Good morning and welcome to Unleash Your Life Force. I'm your host, Dr. Natasha Nelson. Today, as we move up the body and up the spine, we are going to talk about low back pain and low back issues. I'm actually going to separate it into two parts because there's so much about the low back that it would be too much in one episode. So today we're going to talk about the first part of the low back that has to do with the vertebra, the spine. And then on the next one, we'll talk more about the sacrum, the root as the chakra. So I want to break those down so that it's just easier to keep track. So, I have a friend here, my guest, who's going to help us out, Mr. Spine, Mr. Skeleton Spine. So, as a chiropractor, low back pain is actually the number one reason people go to a chiropractor. And instead of explaining and trying to, the five vertebra, the pelvis, the hips, I just thought I'd show it to you. So he's going to come and sit over here. If we need him again, I'll bring him back. But I just thought I'd show him and let him join the party. All right. So when we talk about the low back, the emotions that are really associated with the low back for this section is going to be a little bit, depression, depletion, anxiety, control. There's some overlap between these two episodes, but the energy of the low back, it carries everything from the foundation. It's the first chakra, has a lot of energy. It's the nerves that go to our reproductive organs. So there's a lot in there. Oftentimes, people come in to see me chiropractically. There are structural issues, but not the detrimental kind. It may not be, a fracture or something broken. It's the stress that plays a role on how the muscles operate. So I want to talk about how the emotions cause the energy to be depleted in the muscles of the low back, the ligaments, and how the body moves, how it develops arthritis, how disc bulge, disc herniations are all part of that same first layer of the low back. So let's talk about some of the common phrases. That's where I like to start with the low back. They go with the whole back, but some of them really carry really specific, concentrated in the low back. So if you think about, the sayings or the phrases, get off my back, which is to stop criticizing, to stop pressuring somebody. It's really also the second one is going to be the expression of having your back against the wall. And that one's really going to apply here as we go through, and you'll see why. But it's having to do with being in a difficult situation or experience and feeling like your options are limited. You can talk about the phrases, it's back breaking work. Something is breaking your back. But back breaking work really has to do with the emotional toll that you are carrying in the work that you do. Yes, physically, but it's the emotional toll and the emotional work that you are carrying that is breaking your back to keep carrying it with you. And then there is to have someone's back. To have their back means you got them when they don't see you, because in the back, what you can't see. So being able to say, I have somebody's back. So as I say those phrases, I just want you to think about, well, what are the things that come to mind for you? That doesn't mean they all apply, but it's really just some food for thought to get your energy to start to concentrate and think about areas in your life that create, stress, that are maybe difficult, that affect the energy that's moving and flowing through your low back. This one's really personal for me. I remember on two different occasions, I'll tie them together, where, you know, in high school, I had a great high school experience. I'm not going to lie. I loved it. I went to a small private school, and it was the perfect place for me to be at that time. There had been so much chaos in my home and so much uncertainty that this school provided. It was a family. It was so small. But high school is where I really flourished because there were rules. As an athlete, there were rules academically, there were rules, there was structure. And the more that I leaned into the rules and the structure and the foundation, the better everything seemed to be. Like everything seemed good, everything flowed, everything was accessible, and I was successful. And so the rules that gave me structure that developed in high school carried through. And I didn't think about that, through college and all the different, decades later. But how my body was starting to let me know and how things changed. So in 2016 was one of those life altering, life defining year for me, where I was on the tail end of burning out in practice, and my body was letting me know. And my low back gave out and was in such excruciating pain. I collapsed in bed, and I didn't get out of bed for almost 3 months. 3 months. I could barely crawl out of bed and take a shower, barely crawl out of bed to make food, but really, my mom had to come and live with me to take care of me. And my daughter at the time, she was about 7, and my mom had to take care of her. And really, 2016 was the year where life just collapsed. All of the rules, everything that I had built was deconstructing and it was falling apart. And my low back was letting me know it was time to reevaluate the rules, the structure, the foundation, the operating system that had gotten me that far was no longer working for me. And it wasn't going to work anymore for me to move and go further. And so that's part of the emotional component of how the low back starts, letting you know when the foundation, your beliefs, your operating system, doesn't mean it's bad, doesn't mean it's wrong, but it needs to be reviewed. Because the structures that I had created for my life, the operating system and the rules that I started to adopt through middle school and high school, I had continued, not only did I continue them, but they became more and more solid, and in some ways more and more rigid, from rules to time of the day and getting everything done in my to-do lists. And at many times where it just became robotic, like I don't have time to think about what I'm going to do. I don't have time to feel anything. So I just shut down, and you just go. You do what's on the to-do list. You do what you need to do. You go work out, and you eat, and you work, and you do. And that was the regimen and how I was operating all through college, through starting my practice. And by 2016, I was 17 years in practice by then. And the burnout of the way I was operating was letting me know it was all up for review. But really, what was happening that created the pain, the deep, deep pain in the low back, was the terror. And those are the emotions that come with excruciating low back pain. There's going to be different emotions. Yes, fear and anxiety. But even deeper than that has to do with depletion, depression, and terror. And so when we look at those emotions, fear is, yes, at the root of all of them. So it's kind of generic. So I'll talk about it. I don't really spend too much time on just fear. Because if you go below the surface, what I had been, doing those 17 years of practice was just going and going and going and going. And the need to work, the need to compete and play volleyball and trying to chase the dream. But it was the operating beliefs of how rigid my schedule had to be, how inflexible the schedule needed to be, that there was no room for error, no room for mistakes, but there was also no room for spontaneous creativity, allowing things to flow. It was very scheduled, very regimented, very exactly had to be a specific way. Depression and depletion first is going to be a precursor to burnout because you're just tired. Depletion is just your energy wearing out and using all of your energy without any way of bringing energy back in. So it's a simple math, checks and balances. It's like spending more energy than you're putting in. And the depletion, part of the energy that goes with depletion of the low back is these rigid rules that we live by and the very rigid operating systems that we've adopted that work for a while, but we never really look at them and review them as we get older to see if they still make sense for us. How did we get those operating systems? How did we develop those rules? How did we develop the way of being that we believed is the only way of being? And oftentimes, when the low back will not let you get up, won't let you move, you have nowhere to go but to sit with your thoughts and think about it. And in my case, was a lot of writing, a lot of journaling. The depletion of energy leads to depression. And depression is really about replaying, parts of your past, mistakes, quote, mistakes that you made, and thinking about how you could have, but really how you should have done them differently. But depression is going to show up when you believe that you should have been smarter or better or strong enough or something different than how you were at the time so that you could prevent the mistake or that you could have avoided whatever you call a failure, a mistake. And in my case, in practice early on, I didn't know how to set boundaries. I didn't know, how to not be conned and, financially. And so there was a part where I felt so much embarrassment and humiliation and shame. that I just didn't know how to get out of the situation, how to make it better, how to deal with it. So I kept going on and trying to fix it myself. But below the surface was the driving force of depression, feeling like I should have known better. I should have been smarter. And that's where the energy kept draining, that the yes, I should have been smarter and better. And at the same time, well, that I can work harder and do more and be better to make up for it. Because that's what had worked for me in high school, which was, okay, well, if there's a mistake or a failure, then you work harder to correct it and you work harder to fix it. So that's how I had operated. You work harder, do more, work harder, do more, work harder, do more, more. This sounding familiar for any of you? Yeah. But the real depth of emotion, the pain that was starting to come up when I had nowhere to go and I was stuck in bed, it wasn't just fear and it wasn't just anxiety, it was terror. There's a deep, deep terror that showed up because I felt like my survival, like my ability to meet my needs, to pay rent, to pay for food, to support my daughter, to help my mom. I was the breadwinner. It was me. I was the one responsible for the household. I'm the one responsible for the family. And if I couldn't work, then the family structure, the family financially would be in ruin. And it's the terror that came with that belief. And at the root of the belief was that if I was not successful financially, that CPS was going to take my daughter from me. Because that's what I was told as a child, that if you don't handle the finances, if there's, financial crisis, if the parents cannot support financially for their children, CPS would come and take them. And that I didn't know was part of the root of what was driving my operating system. And I didn't know that. It was unconscious. But when I had 3 months in bed with nothing else to do but journal and think about it, that's what came up, because the terror was right in front of me and it was real. And that's when I went, oh, the driving force of why I wasn't setting up boundaries, why the mistakes that I was making, but the constant work and work and work harder and work more and work 7 days a week and work 12-hour days and 18-hour days and going nonstop. That was the driving force for me, which was the belief that I, as the financial breadwinner of the family, if I was the failure, my daughter would be taken from me. So I share that because so often low back pain is related to money. It's related to survival. It's related to the beliefs that we have around money, about the foundation that is the driving force. The first root chakra, which I'll talk on the part 2, is really about, there's a lot of energy and creative energy and a force that comes through. But that first chakra is about the terror, the fear, survival. And the low back pain, that the rigid rules that we live by causes the muscles to become tight and very rigid. They lack the flexibility. The spine, the low back especially, it's meant to withstand the weight. It's meant to be flexible. We've got 5 lumbar vertebrae in the low back. and you have a disc in between each of those vertebrae. The discs are there as the shock absorbers. They're there to allow for flexibility. They're also there to maintain the natural curve of the spine. The reason you have a curve in the spine is so that when you walk and jump and play and all the things that you do, it absorbs the shock. It just goes with the flow. And so when the discs do not absorb the shock and they start to wear out, the bones start to grind together. That's the phases of arthritis that start to show up. And that's what's going to alter the curve of the spine. It's also what's going to change the flexibility, the discs, which leads to herniations, which leads to disc bulges. But when you think about the structure of the low back, all of the muscles that connect from the abdominal to the piriformis to the hip flexors, everything, when you are tight and rigid in your operating system and it has to be a certain way and the to-do list and everything is very structured and there's no room for flexibility, the muscles feel that. The energy depletes. The muscles become very tight, very rigid, which means they have no ability to go with the flow and absorb the shock of just walking and working out. But even more, they don't even absorb the shock and they don't maintain the curve in the spine when you're sitting at a desk. So if you're sitting and, some people clench the jaw, but when the stress is related to money, finances, home, responsibilities, the foundation of how you operate, you're going to clench the hips and tighten the low back. And it's all that is going to be ongoing, which makes it, when you're sitting, your body starts to tighten up in places it shouldn't. So then you can't stand up straight. You can't move forward. You can't get comfortable. All that to say, yes, it's important to be adjusted, of course. It's important to keep mobility through stretches, through yoga, through Pilates, whatever you do, exercise, all those that are important. But that's only the first layer. You have the layer that's the physical. And then there's also the emotional component, which is why I do the podcast, to help you understand that part of the layers of healing has to do with your ability to face the terror, face what it is that is lodged in your unconscious, that is driving you. What's driving you? What's causing the terror? What is it that's making you feel so deeply, deeply afraid? That's where you need to go. I know there's a lot in there, and that was just part one. So there's so much about the low back. It's of all the parts in the body, it is going to be the one area that has multiple episodes because there is just so much and too much in one episode. So today was really about understanding the structure of the low back, the emotions of anxiety and fear, but terror. And it's about your ability to examine what's causing the terror for you that's altering your operating system. It's affecting how you show up. It's affecting the flexibility and the mobility of the structures in your low back. So I hope that this was helpful. And as always, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate your comments, your questions, your likes and your shares, and of course to subscribe because that helps me. But it's really my intention to help you understand that over 30 years in practice, so much of what I've learned to help your health and healing journey, because it's so many layers. It doesn't have to be complicated, but it needs to address all the different layers that go together. So again, thank you so much for listening. I'm your host, Dr. Natasha Nelson, and this was this episode of Unleash Your Life Force. And you know, my favorite saying is feel your feelings or your body will feel them for you. Okay, until next time, bye.